Welcome to The Impact with Robin Dorsey. I am your host, Robin Dorsey. Thank you so much for joining us. I am glad to be back here with you. I know I have been gone for quite some time, and I truly did miss you all. As you know, I went on a fabulous vacation with my son. Unfortunately, towards the end of the vacation, my son and I both got sick. On the vacation, came back. I could not hear out of neither one of my ears, so I couldn't hear you all to be able to talk to you all. So I couldn't come and entertain you like I normally do. But I'm happy to report that I do have hearing back in one of my ears. Unfortunately, I still don't have it back in my left ear. But we're prayerful that things will be restored very shortly, because this right here is not going to work out for me. You know, I need both of my ears to be able to hear you all eloquently, and so you can hear me and what I'm saying to you. Don't you need your ears? Because I certainly do. Yes, thank you. But I am glad to be back. I missed you all again. But we have a fantastic and phenomenal guest, as usual, here on The Impact with Robin Dorsey. And our guest tonight is Antwone Harris. And he has a fantastic business, and it is called Platinum
Bridge Wealth Strategy.
Platinum Bridge Wealth Strategy. See, the ear infection has my equilibrium off, and I can't even speak right now. I apologize, but you already know I'm going to be on point, because when we have to share for you tonight, you're going to be great. So don't you worry about a thing. We got this in the bag. Now, so without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Harris. So, he resides in Washington, D.C. He went to Howard University.
No, I went to University of Maryland.
University of Maryland.
And Georgetown University.
And Georgetown, but you have a lot of...
All my friends went to Howard.
HBCUs,
there you go. Yes,
correct. But he has a wonderful wife, 2 sons, and a daughter. He specializes in working with people as they plan for and start to live on some of their own assets. We all want to do that at some point in our lives. We need that money. He is a veteran financial professional and have spent over 15 years in helping clients successfully navigate various market environments, including the tech wreck of 2000 and the housing crisis of 2008. Interesting. He is a retirement income planning specialist. So all of you wonderful people that's in your retirement stage and you are ready to make that transition to, the good life where you don't have to punch the clock no more every day, you can look him up after we finish telling you more about him. He is the chief planning strategist of Platinum Bridge Wealth Management, financial literacy advocate, and proponent of financial education. Does a lot. He's fantastic, I'm telling you. Wait till you meet him. Just in a few seconds. Got you. He is in his former role as vice president, he served as the senior financial consultant with Charles Schwab. Yes, that is a great financial management company. So I can see where he got his wonderful skills and, techniques and talents. He was responsible for working with more than 340 clients and managed more than $890 million in client assets. He was getting money. Yes. He was ranked in the top 5% over 1,100 advisors throughout the country. And he has helped hundreds of clients define strategy and execute comprehensive plans for maintaining their desired standard of living as they transition from their main career into retirement, of course. He launched Platinum Bridge Wealth Management to provide specialized services to help people ensure their money lasts as long as they do. And don't we all want that? We want long money. So he's going to show us and tell us how to get that long money. He is a board member of Bright Beginnings. He is a child and family development center that offers a bright start for homeless infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and their families. So that is actually a great organization. I used to do some volunteer work for them many years ago, so they do provide a lot of great assistance and resources. So you can also look them up if you want to provide resources to them or you need some help. Bright Beginnings is awesome. So he also has a master's in business administration from Georgetown University. He is a certified financial planner, and he is a retirement income certified professional. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my fantastic guest, Antwone Harris. Hello and welcome.
How you doing, Robin? Good seeing you.
I'm good. Good seeing you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit of what drove you down this path of, finances and management and strategizing. What made you want to go into that field?
Well, I've always liked money.
Yes.
Since I was little. So
money.
since I was a kid. So I grew up in a small town in New Jersey.
Okay.
And my grandparents they raised me,
Okay.
basically. And I spent a lot of time working with my pop. He was a bricklayer. He was a brick mason.
Okay.
So I was always working since
Okay.
I was young. Like, I started working. I used to go out on the job with him when I was like 3.
Wow.
So I started getting paid. I guess I was around 8. I would get paid a little
So
bit.
you was getting paid already.
Yeah, a little bit of money.
Okay.
And then I would just I never liked to spend money. I would just put it away.
So you would save it.
I would save it and save it and save it. And then I started trying to figure out ways to earn some more interest. So I started buying CDs, when I was a kid. And then when I was 16, because my pop, he didn't know anything about investing at all.
Okay.
When I was 16, my basketball coach, they had an economic simulation game in one of the classes that I was in.
Oh, wow.
And they did
The basketball coach.
The basketball coach taught an economics class.
Wow.
And I
that's
took it as
amazing.
an elective, right?
Okay.
So they had a stock simulation game.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about stocks.
Okay.
And I got exposed to stocks.
At 16.
And at 16, I was
wow,
like,
that's amazing.
oh, you can make money by buying stocks? I had no concept of that.
Right.
And I was like, just as soon as I got exposed to it, that was it. I just took to it.
Wow.
I was reading books and reading books and learning everything I could learn. I didn't have any money,
Okay.
of course. So fast forward, when I graduated college, I got a job.
Okay.
I was a
What was the job?
I was a pharmaceutical rep. My
Okay.
first job for
Wow.
Merck. Yep. And I got a bonus check.
Also a great company.
Yeah, it was a good
You
company.
worked some nice Fortune 500
Yep,
companies
good
here.
company. So I got a check for $3,000.
Okay.
And back in the day, everybody used to wear Tommy Hilfiger clothes.
Yes.
So I bought Tommy Hilfiger stock.
Wow. Okay.
And I mean, it wasn't because I really knew what I was doing. I just
Right.
knew everybody was buying it. And I knew that if you own the stock, you own the company.
Yes.
So I bought the stock, and of course the stock did well.
Yes, it did.
So I had a good experience out the gate. And I took a little money from the stock. I
Right.
went to Jamaica, and I was
Right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to be killing it. So
Right.
that's what happened. So then I was really, really into it. So
Okay.
when I was waiting to see the doctors, I'll be reading the investment papers and reading books and
Wow.
everything. So then fast forward, I did that for a couple years, but I wanted to learn more about stocks. So
Okay.
I quit my job and I went back to school. I went to Georgetown and I
Okay.
studied finance, and I just
Wow.
just to learn more about investing. So then when I finished that, I was a day trader. So I had built up a little bit of money in the stocks.
Okay.
So then when I left Georgetown, I just traded my own account.
Wow.
And that I learned so much more trading my own account than I did in graduate school about how the markets work and
Really?
everything. So by the time I finished that, I was pretty much, I mean, I knew what I was doing at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I had all my hard knocks and everything. So at that point, I knew what I was
Yes,
doing.
A day trader. So
Yeah.
just tell us about what a typical day, because we've seen the movies, Wall Street and all
Right.
these things, how crazy it's like 50,000 people in one room.
Right.
And, everybody's talking and trading and doing all these things. So tell us what one day would be in a day trading. Like,
Well,
how
day
crazy?
trading, I was trading my own account. So I
Okay.
wasn't in like a room with other people. It was
Okay.
me with my computer in my
Okay.
apartment
Okay,
trading
good.
stocks.
Okay.
And it's crazy. It's
Wow.
ridiculously crazy. I mean, the stress level
Wow.
it's beyond what, because everything I had was in the stock
the
market.
stock,
Literally every
right.
penny I owned was in the stock market
Wow.
every day. And if I didn't make money, I had a daughter at the time.
Right.
I had to pay, my living expenses,
Right.
my rent, my car, and take care of my child. I mean, it's a lot of pressure.
Right.
So it's actually too stressful.
Yeah.
So I would get up and start doing my research in the morning,
Okay.
and then when the market opened at 9:30, the whole time you're just in front of the computer the
Oh,
whole
wow,
time,
all day.
like every tick of the market all day until 4 o'clock.
wow.
I got up one time and made a sandwich, and I had lost $3,000 in like a few minutes.
Oh, wow.
So like you have to
you have to watch it.
it's just not
constantly.
healthy.
Right.
So
Because you're obsessed with it.
Because-
Because now you just watch it
right,
like,
you have
oh
to
my
watch
God.
every tick of the market, so it's just not a healthy way to invest. But as I said, because I had so much depending on it, I mean,
Right.
I learned so much. I just immersed
Right.
myself in everything around the markets. So it helped me later, but trying to day trade for a living, I would not recommend it for someone.
Wow, okay.
I would
so
not
it's too
recommend that
much.
for someone. It's just too much stress. It's too
Wow.
much stress. And
How-
I basically traded for a little more than a year,
Wow.
and I ended up with the same amount as I started.
Oh, wow.
But I had paid all my bills for the
Okay.
year. So basically, you kind of
You
just
came up, you broke even.
broke. Well,
Okay.
I made enough money to pay my bills, and then
Right.
I ended up with the same amount when I started. And I was like,
Okay.
this is just crazy. So
Right.
then
Wow.
then I went and did some other stuff, and then I started becoming a financial advisor for longer term investing.
So tell us about how did that become along. So you went through this journey.
Yep.
You found, your niche.
Yep.
So then you said, okay, well, the natural progression is becoming a financial advisor.
Well, not quite. So
Okay.
I had always decided that I was just going to trade stocks for myself.
Oh.
Because
so you never in your mind.
I
you
never
was like,
intended
I
on-
want to do this for everybody.
No, I
all
never
my
intended
family
on
and
doing
friends.
that. I wanted to just have a regular career and just take excess
Okay.
profits and trade my own account. That was just and then retire early. That was the whole
Okay.
idea. So but people kept asking me what they should do with their money all the time. They were asking,
Right.
Twan, what should I do with this? What should I do with
Right.
this? So it was happening so frequently that God started talking to me, like,
Right.
because I day traded, and then I took a regular job. I was a product manager for DirecTV.
Okay.
And I was still trading my own account on the
Wow.
side. But I wasn't trading every second.
Right.
I was trading longer term. I would buy some stocks and hold them for several months and then
Okay.
sell them, which is a much more reasonable way to
Okay,
invest your money.
okay.
So I was doing that. I did that for several years. And then, again, everyone was asking me about what they should do. So God was like, you should become a financial advisor.
Yeah.
But financial advisors
Okay.
make zero. You get no salary unless you have
So
clients.
you're on straight commission.
It's not even commission. You charge a percentage of assets. So commission means you sell somebody something
Right.
and then you get a
you
commission.
profit. Right.
When you manage money for people, you take an advisory fee, and it's a percentage of the assets that you manage.
Wow.
So if you manage zero, you take a percent of zero.
Zero.
So
right.
you literally make no money. And I had, at the time I was married with and my
Right.
daughter.
Right.
I had responsibilities, and I was like, I can't really
live off
make
of that.
zero.
Right.
So I was like, I'm not going to do that. Then God just kept talking to me. And then it just got to the point where it just became so obvious that was what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
That I took a leap. So I left my job. I was making zero.
Okay.
And it was a very difficult
Yes.
couple of years. It was 2 years of just, I was like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
Like, why would I do something like this? Because despite the fact that I knew what I was doing and I
Right.
had the background and I had the master's in finance and
Right.
everything, I had no clients.
Right.
And I was trying to target only African American clients to start. That was my whole idea, was, hey, I'll do this
Right.
because I wanted to give back in our community.
Right.
But what I found was there was such an information gap,
Right.
and we have just culturally have a pretty big wall up
Yes.
as far as resistance and
Yes.
new ideas and information sometimes, especially when it pertains to finance.
Yes.
We're very private.
Yes, we are.
So that it was just like beating my head against the wall. Like, oh, so I said, well, I can't. I had to feed my family. That's not going to work.
Right.
So a lot of my clients ended up not looking like me.
Right.
But I still felt like I wanted to make sure that I was giving information back in my own community. So that's why, I try to do outreach, educational outreach, and I do it not even for profit. I do it just to kind of get the information out there, because investing has changed my life.
Wow.
It has given me the ability to do some things that I would not have been able to do otherwise.
Right.
And it's been able to allow me to put some money away to educate my kids,
Right.
and be able to have a certain lifestyle. And it's all because I've been investing for so long.
Right.
And it's very powerful. And
Right.
I realize from talking to people that oftentimes we're not making always the best decisions with our money.
Right.
Even though we're making very strong incomes, educated,
Right. Yes.
professional, nice house, nice car.
Yes.
But when I go to the other side and start
Yes.
looking at the
There's a
balance
gap.
sheet, there's
Yes.
a gap there. And it keeps me up at night, actually. So
Yeah.
my pastor always says, if it keeps you up at night, then instead of looking for somebody else to do something
Right.
about it, you're supposed to do something
Yep, you
about
have
it.
to
So
be the
that's why
change that you're looking
that's
for.
exactly right. And
Absolutely.
that's why. But that's how I kind of transitioned. After that 2-year period, I kind of paid my dues.
Okay.
And I think what happened was God has a plan, and it all
Yes.
circled back to the day trading. I mean, I
Wow.
knew the stuff backwards and forwards. So when I would sit down with someone, because if you figure somebody that doesn't look like me,
Right.
from a different background, different cultural background, when they come in to meet with a financial advisor,
Yes.
they're not picturing an Antwone Harris coming around the
Yes,
corner. So there was a
absolutely.
huge resistance there.
Yeah.
But when I would sit down and they would show me their statement, I would just break it down,
Yeah.
and they'd be like, "Oh, because
You know what
green,
you're talking
like
about.
green,
Yes.
right, is the universal color." So once I
Absolutely.
started breaking everything down, people were like, "Oh, okay," and then that was really how. So the going back to some other things earlier helped me later on.
So, 2 questions for you about that. So, why didn't you so you knew that day trading, and things like that was profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how come you didn't dibble a little bit more into trying to trade for other people too? But that just wasn't your niche. You wasn't interested in that.
What I tell people, and it's kind of a bad analogy, but it's
Okay.
like somebody that takes a life of crime on, and there's consequences when you take on a life of crime, right? Like you
Right.
can do certain things, but there's the downside,
Right.
and some people can deal with the downside.
Right.
And some people are out there just fronting, and they can't
Right.
deal with the downside.
True.
They want to try to live this certain
Right.
lifestyle. They want to be big, this and this and this. Then
Absolutely.
they get a log case or something like that. Then they fold up like a tent
Right.
because they're not built for that lifestyle.
Yes, that's
Trading
very true.
stock, you have to be built a certain way,
Wow.
because, as I said, I would get up from my chair and I have
Yeah.
lost $3,000 in a few minutes. So some people are
Jesus.
not built for that.
Yes.
And I
people
am. So it's like, right.
people commit suicide. off
I
that.
understand the risk that I'm taking,
Right.
and I'm okay with that,
Right.
because I know that if I place 10 trades, I may be right 4 times,
Right.
but I only need to be right 4 times and still make the other 6
Right.
times I could be wrong.
Right.
So the most important thing is, when you're wrong, you have to cut your losses as soon as
Okay.
possible.
Okay.
Identify when you're wrong. You can't have a chunk of money then lose the whole daggone thing.
Right.
So it's like, hey, I
have to know when to
misinterpreted. I'm
fold
wrong. Let me get out of this. I'm
Right.
gonna cut. People have a problem cutting their
Yes.
losses. So for me to do that for somebody else,
Right.
they just would not be able to kind of sit through the ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Now, longer term investing is different.
Okay.
So I think what's important is, and I think where there's a big disconnect, a lot of people confuse trading with investing.
Wow.
So I was trading stock.
Right,
I was in
right.
and out, in and out, in and out. Most people are not built for that.
True.
Investing, everyone should be investing.
Okay.
Because investing is simply saying you are taking a position that you believe is going to appreciate over the next decade.
Right.
Right? The stock market is up 75% of the time.
Right.
So when you look at every year, at the end of the year, 75% of the time the stock market has made money.
Right.
And over long periods of time, the stock market has always made money.
Right.
If you look at every rolling 10-year period going back in history, going all the way back through before the Great Depression,
Right.
every 10-year period, there's only been 3 10-year periods when anyone's ever lost any money, and it was like 0.3%. There's
Right.
never been a 20-year period.
Wow.
So if you are starting your career, or you're investing, or you're investing for retirement,
Right.
and you don't have enough stock exposure,
Right.
because you're worried about the
Right.
stock market could go back
Yes.
or fall, you're thinking like a trader. But as an
Oh, okay.
investor, all you need to just have the time horizon. If you
Right.
say, hey, this is money 10 years plus, you're fine. Just
Right.
get them, make sure you're diversified. Don't worry about it. Don't even look at it.
Right.
And over time, that money is going to appreciate. So it doesn't even take a genius to just invest.
Right.
You just have to participate and just have
Right.
enough information to know that you're going to be okay.
Right. So if someone was to ask you, how would they go about investing for the first time? Which one? Because there's so many different types of companies. You have E-Trade.
Right.
You have so many different. Like, hey, if you sign up, you'll get $50 just for
Right.
signing up tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, or refer a friend, you get $50 and you get $100 to trade. So,
Yep.
what do you recommend people sign up with if they want to, at least start financial
Get started.
investing?
Well, I think the first step is opening an account is really easy.
Okay.
So there's a lot of reputable companies. Charles Schwab is a good company.
Okay.
Fidelity is a good company. TD Ameritrade is a
Right.
good company. Like you mentioned, E-Trade. There's a lot of places you can go for free.
Okay.
Now, what I would not do,
Okay.
do not go to your bank and invest.
Really?
Do not allow someone from your local bank
Right.
to get you to invest, because they're not set up for investments. They're set up to hold bank funds.
Right.
And when they get into the investment side, oftentimes they're trying to sell you something.
Right.
They're trying to sell you some kind of product or something that's really it may not be appropriate for you.
Right.
What you need to do is go to one of those companies that I mentioned,
Okay.
a Schwab, a Fidelity,
Right.
a TD Ameritrade, an E-Trade. Open up an account where they're not charging you a fee to open
Right.
the account. It's free. Open the
Yes.
account. You don't have to have a ton of money.
Right.
And what you want to invest in is either a diversified mutual fund
Okay.
or something called an index fund.
Okay.
And an index fund simply means that you've heard of the Dow Jones
Right.
average or the S&P 500.
Yes.
An index fund simply just tracks the entire index.
Oh, wow.
So the S&P 500 is made up of 500 of the largest stocks
Okay.
in the country, in the United States. If you buy the S&P 500, you basically are fully diversified because you have 500 different stocks.
Yes.
It's not like you're taking a shot on Apple or Google or
Right.
Fitbit or something like that,
Okay.
which they can, I mean, it's not likely, but they
Right.
can lose all their money. And that's how people can
Lose
get in trouble.
everything, right.
You just invest in something very diversified. It's not sexy. And you just
Right.
let it sit there
Right. Let it sit.
and let it grow.
Time.
Right.
Some time.
That's a good way to get started initially.
Okay.
There's also something called target date funds, which are really important.
Okay.
And it's relatively new, but
Target
they
date.
allow you to invest for a target date in the future. So it's 2018. There may be a target date fund for 2030.
Okay.
And what'll happen
wow.
is it'll diversify you automatically, and as it gets closer to that date, it becomes less risky automatically. So at the beginning, it'll have a whole bunch of stock.
Right.
The way you make it less risky is you reduce the stock
Right.
exposure over time, and you start buying things that are safer, like bonds.
Right.
So that happens automatically. You don't have to know what you're doing.
Oh,
You go into
good.
one of those
Wow.
companies that I said, you say, hey, I have X amount of dollars. I want to invest for this time frame,
Right.
and I want a target date fund. They'll know exactly what you're talking about,
Yes.
and they'll set you up, and then you set it and just forget it and just let it grow.
So, okay, a couple other questions about, this investment thing. So, a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard that everybody was going crazy over the Bitcoin.
Right.
And people was like, oh, I gotta buy this Bitcoin. I need to purchase all this stuff in Bitcoin. So, they had a huge high. And then, of course, when everybody found out about it, that people was making money and it kept going up, then it had the huge low.
Right.
So, tell us about this Bitcoin fade that went on,
Right.
and what's your opinion about the Bitcoin and all these other?
Yeah, I did a video about Bitcoin
Okay.
a while back because everybody was asking me about Bitcoin.
Yes.
So one of the things that I mentioned is that typically there's signs that you look for when there's a bubble in something, meaning that things have gone, everyone's so hyped up about something
Yes.
that it's potentially going to crash.
Yes.
And the same thing happened with tech stocks
Yep.
back in 2000, real estate,
Yes.
2006, 2007, everybody. So typically, and the thing to look for when you identify a bubble is when everybody is asking you about the same thing.
Yep.
It's typically too late
Yep.
to invest in something.
Absolutely.
Because it's all supply and demand.
Yes.
So if I have supply, I need somebody to buy it from me.
Right.
But when everybody is already bought in, there's no one else to sell it to.
That's right.
And that's when you start to have this kind of bubble dynamic. So I was talking about different bubble phenomenons. I mean, they've been bubbles that have been in place since, going all the way back through history. I was
Right.
talking about the tulip bulb crisis in the 17th century, where there was like these tulip bulbs that had some kind of virus, and they had different colors, and they were selling tulip bulbs to people back in the 1600s. Yeah. So what happened is people started putting up their property, their farms and their homes and everything for these unique tulip bulbs. They became very valuable. But same kind of thing. Everybody was going crazy about these tulip bulbs. That one day someone said, "Hey, this is just a tulip bulb. This is not worth this farm and all your goats and everything." So they said this is worthless. And then the next, and everyone lost a lot of money.
Oh, wow.
So this is not a new phenomenon.
Right.
So when people ask me about the Bitcoin, and the cab drivers ask me about Bitcoin, and people that don't know anything about investing, I'm like, hey, it's probably too late.
Right.
So as soon as that was at 20,000, probably about a month later, it was down to like 10,000. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I'm like, this is not. So no, for if you're trying to invest, Bitcoin is not where you want to invest. That's not. That would be something that, if you have a pretty diversified portfolio and you have some extra money, you want to take a flyer on Bitcoin, that's how you would do that. But if you're uninitiated, you're just getting started, you're just trying to build your nest egg, that's not where you want to be. It's very volatile. Now, what happens typically when there's new technology, or an innovative invention or something like that, oftentimes the idea is excellent.
Yes.
But the first players are not the ones that actually prosper.
Right.
So you saw that with automobiles. Back in the day, there were over 1,000 automobile companies. A lot. But then Ford didn't invent the automobile. But they perfected it, and they emerged as the leader in that space. So back then you could say, hey, well, these horseless carriages are going to be the next phase, and you would have been right. But trying to pick out which company of the 1,000 plus would have emerged as the predominant company is very difficult. So you can see a technology come online, like the internet. There were all these internet companies. Well, which ones are going to emerge? So American Online, they had their issues, and then you had all these Netscape and all these companies that are gone, Napster and all these things. So what happened to all these companies? Well, what you do is when you identify a technology, you don't try to guess. You wait till it emerges, right? You wait till the leaders emerge. You don't have to be on the ground floor. You could be in phase 1, phase 2, right? Apple was a company. They had been a company for several decades before they had this crazy run that they've been on with the iPad and the iPhone. So you don't have to try to guess. This whole cryptocurrency is a very valid technology. There's a lot of things that probably are applicable in different markets, but Bitcoin may not be the one that emerges. There's a lot of other companies that are nascent companies that are on the horizon that are developing that have not yet maybe fully emerged. But I'm not going to guess, right? I don't have to be in phase 1. I'll see what happens. Oh, this company has kind of set itself apart. Then if I'm going to take some exposure there, it's going to be at the right price at the right time, and then you kind of let that ride. If you're wrong, you cut your losses short. But again, that's not really what new investors should be doing.
Okay. So let's talk about your company. So when did you did your financial planning and management. And so when did you branch off and start your company, and tell us about your company and your clientele?
Sure. Okay. So I was with Charles Schwab for several years, and I worked in a high net worth group there. So I worked with clients that came with at least $500,000 or more, and I would manage their assets for them. So I was doing that, and I would work with everybody. So what happened is I was there for over 10 years. So a lot of my clients that I started with started getting to the point where they're going to retire. And I was like, well, the baby boomers are the largest group here in this country. They're getting older, they're retiring, and the mindset is shifting. Before people would ask me, the hot investments, and they're trying to put their foot on the gas. Then they're like, hey, I'm getting close to retirement. I really need to take less risk, and I'm worried about running out of money, and I need how do I maximize my Social Security, and why do I choose Medicare, and I'm worried about this, I'm worried about all these things that happen when you're retiring. How do I generate income? How do I replicate my paycheck? Should I take a lump sum from my 401k, or I have a pension? How do I think about these things? And I said, well, this is it's kind of a paradigm shift in the marketplace, so I've tried to get ahead of it. So I said, I'm going to go, and I did some additional education to become a retirement income specialist. So I did that, and then I started kind of executing this niche within the practice that I had built out, and just developing a different expertise around that. And I felt like there was a business opportunity, and I felt like I was making this company a lot of money. And I can make myself a lot of money. So I said, I think I can add value in the space, and I had been doing the research around it, so I launched my business.
Wow.
And so people that are typically people come to me when they're really getting serious about what that next phase is going to look like. So it's like, hey, I have old 401ks here. I haven't been paying that much attention. I left 3 jobs. I left these 3 401ks in the old job, and I'm working here, and I'm getting to this point. Now I need to get serious. Then they come to me. We map out the game plan. I map out how they're going to generate the income. I map out how much risk they should take, what the allocation looks like, and then I kind of put it in different phases. And then I start to factor in how they're going to deal with their kids, if they're educating their kids, if they have a sick parent they're dealing with, how you can drain a lot of money taking care of a sick parent.
Yes, you can.
Or if you or your spouse gets sick, right? So how do you incorporate all these different things into the planning dynamic? So that's what I do. So that's my niche. Now separately, again, the education piece in my community is very important to me, and so even though that's not my main business, helping people when they first start out investing, or people that have never invested, that's not a business model of mine, but the education piece is very important, and I feel like I need to give back. I've been very blessed, and I want to provide that information to educate people, to help them make better decisions. So I set up a separate brand for specifically educating African American professionals, regardless of how much money you have or what your background is. If you have $1 million, I can help you. If you have, if you never invested before, and I don't charge a fee for it, it's just education. And there was an area called Black Wall Street. Back in the day, I'm sure you know the story. Back in the 20s, there was all these black businesses in Oklahoma, and long story short, people across the river had some issues, got jealous. They dropped a bomb on this area and destroyed all these beautiful black businesses. And it was in Greenwood Avenue in Oklahoma. So I launched a separate brand called the New Greenwood Avenue, and it's specifically for educating African Americans around investing. So that's what I'm doing. So that's it.
So in the class, so how long is the class? Do you go out to teach the class? Do they come to you? So how do you do that?
It's not a class. It's just if you go to AntwoneHarris.com. It's ANTWONE Harris.com. Just say I want to stay in touch. And what I'll do is I have an email list, and I just do educational videos. I put it out. I'm creating a membership site that's free where people can come. There's just going to be educational material there. I'm going to be doing webinars around things. I'm writing a book around it. A lot of different things around the education piece in the African American communities. That's what I'm doing.
So giving back is very important, and people need to know this information. So if you're not sharing that, then people don't know. So knowledge and education, as we both know, is very important. So to be able to share that with other people and to make that a part of your mission, I mean, that's phenomenal. You're doing some great things.
That's it. That's
You're doing
it.
some great things. So let's talk a little bit more about your retirement piece with actually helping our retirees make that transition into retirement and being able to live in their light of having financial freedom.
Well, if you kind of think about it, it's a pretty big step for people. It's very emotional. It's very scary for people. There's a lot of different things that people are considering when they're going to stop working, because a lot of their identity is tied up in their business or their job, and they're just very nervous. And what's happened is, with advances in healthcare, a lot of people are living much longer than they would have anticipated. So people are retiring. They want to retire early. Then they're living long. So you may retire in your mid-50s and live into your 90s. That's 40 years. A lot of people are going to be retired longer than they actually worked. And they have a finite amount of money. And they're concerned about outliving the money. And they can't afford a 2008 scenario in retirement. So, well, given that dynamic, what should I do? So they come to me, we map out a plan. So I do something called milestone planning. So there's certain things that happen where there's money that's going to kick in for you or whomever, just based upon your work history. So if you work for the government, there's a pension that's going to kick in. If you don't work for the government, you don't have a pension, Social Security is going to kick in. right? When you turn 70 and a half, if you have a
That's
401k,
crazy that they increased the 70 and a half, because it used to be 62.
well,
Then
right.
65. Now it's 70 and a half because we're living longer, so they increased the age.
Well, you have an option. If you take Social Security early, they reduce your payments, and then if you take it later at 70, then you get a little bump to it. But if your 401k, you have to start taking money out of it at 70 and a half, even if you don't need it.
Oh, really?
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so you have built up money in a TSP or a 401k or a 403b, any company-based retirement plan. You're required by law to take a required distribution at 70 and a half.
Oh, wow.
So I know these certain milestones are happening. I know that at 62 you could take Social Security. You may delay it till 66, 67, or 70. So when that money kicks in, that changes the investment dynamic, right? If you need $10,000 a month, I know if I have $3,000 kicking in from these sources, then that changes how I would invest the money. So I map out these milestones. I may need more money for the first years until these things happen. So then once you're 70 and a half, you have your Social Security, you may have a pension, and the required distribution. So a lot of money's coming in. So how do I structure the investment for the first phase? Then how do I change it for the next phase? Then how do I incorporate your healthcare expenses, any contingencies? You have kids that are, boomerang kids coming back to live with you. How do we think about that? What do we do with your real estate? What do we do about your Medicare decisions? Long-term care insurance, do you have it? Do you need it? If not, then we're going to self-insure. You're going to take your assets and take care of yourself if you get sick. Well, we need to factor that into the plan. So I map out a very detailed plan, and then we just manage the money. And I focus on ways to generate income. I'm looking at the tax situation. You may be in a very low tax bracket when you retire because you stop working.
Your income is lower.
So your income's lower. So how can I maximize the assets given a very low tax bracket versus when you're 70 and a half and all this money's kicking in? Now you bumped up to another tax bracket. Well, maybe I need to do certain things with the investments while your tax bracket's low versus when it's higher, and just factor in all that kind of stuff in.
So realistically, when would be a good time for them to consult you as far as timing? So let's say a person is retiring, they're 65, decided they want to retire. They have 2 years, or their plan in their mind is I'm getting out in 2 years. When is a good time to start that discussion with you, and for them to be able to implement those types of plans?
That's a great question. Typically, if you're already retired, I can help you. Because I'm sure there's a lot of things that you're probably not maximizing. All the way through around 5 years before you retire. Ideally, someone would come to me saying, Antwone, I'm targeting retirement in 5 years. Because there's a lot of things that I need to do while you're working. So for example, if you own a home, I'm going to want you to have a home equity line of credit on your property, not to use, just for emergencies.
Not to use,
and you can't get one when you retire. So while you're working, they're going to say, okay, well, do you have income? Yeah, I'm employed. All right, great. So we'll have a home equity line in case there's an emergency, in case you're running up, instead of running up your credit card at 13-14%. If we need money in an emergency, we can use a home equity line of credit where the interest, a portion of it is tax deductible, right? And the interest rate's a lot lower. So there's different things that we do around that.
So 5 years. So people don't understand those long-term, short-term goals are still applicable even when it's time to retire. You have your 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year goals. So he said
That's
5 years is when you need to really come to him so you can map out all of these things before you make that transition to be able to have a better financial plan and outlook. 5 years.
And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people think that their time horizon is based upon when they retire. But say you do retire when you're 55 or 60, and our life expectancy hopefully is in 80s to 90s, so you still have a very long time horizon. So your time horizon is not just predicated upon when you retire. The time horizon is based upon your life expectancy. So people come to me, they're retired, they're like, oh, well, I need to have all my money under a mattress because I'm now retired. Well, no, because I still need to be able to grow that money, outpace inflation, all these other things. So our time horizon is really 30 years because of your life expectancy. We just need to also have money available to fund you in the interim to make sure that money's not at risk. So what I do is I put money in different buckets. So I'll have at least 2 years of living expenses in basically a risk-free bucket. So I know I can fund you for at least 2 years. regardless of what the stock market does.
Okay.
It's very unlikely that stock market's going to be down
Right.
for two whole
2
years,
years, right.
right? Even 2008 crisis, the stock
Right.
market started to recover pretty
Right.
dramatically well before that.
Absolutely.
So I'll have that very safe bucket 1. Bucket 2 is kind of that mid-range risk, and then
Okay.
bucket 3 is
the
the
high.
longer term.
Right.
Right. Then those buckets just continue to rotate all the way through your life until you pass away.
Wow. So let's talk about, because a lot of people are understood, or they don't understand, have the improper information as far as the Social Security piece of retirement. So let's say for the people who only will have a Social Security check to be able to go on, they didn't have 401k for whatever reason, how do they retire with just using your model with just the Social Security check? What does that look
That's
like?
tough. Yeah,
Really?
it's tough. It
Wow.
really is. I mean, what I tell people, I've had people come to me and just ask me questions around, hey, I started late. I
Right.
should have started when I was in my
Right.
20s and I didn't, and now I'm 55 and now it's too late. Well, no, because of what I just said about your life expectancy, right? So sometimes you may have to get a part-time job or
Right.
something like that and just put some money away.
Okay.
Anything.
Right.
And we get some money put away, then you look at your Social Security situation. Ideally, almost invariably, unless you have a serious health issue
Right.
or you simply cannot afford it, it's best to delay your Social Security until
Okay.
70 if
Wow.
you can,
Okay.
because you get 32% more than you would have otherwise.
Wow.
So
That's a big
yeah,
difference,
normal retirement, normal Social Security is going to kick in at 66
Okay.
for most people.
Right.
It depends upon your birthday.
Right.
You can take it early at 62. If you take it early, you take a 25% haircut for the rest of your life.
25% cut.
If you take it on time, you get your full benefit. If you wait until 70, they give you 32% more than they would have given you
Right.
otherwise. And it's indexed for inflation, so it continues to go up with inflation. So if you can delay it, it makes sense, because
Right.
I need to also plan for you living longer than you anticipate,
Right.
and that lasts for the rest of your life, and it goes up with inflation. So it's really protective
Right.
from that. It protects against living too long, longevity risk. But if you cannot afford it and you have to take your Social Security early, you have to do what you have to do.
Right.
But I would not discourage people from investing,
Right.
even if they started late. You may have to do some part-time work, which I've
Right.
had clients go through late life divorces
Right.
and things, and they said, all right, well,
How do I
this is not what I planned.
Right.
Okay, well, it is what it is. You have to do something.
So then tell us realistically, I haven't put anything away.
Right.
I want to get started. What is the realistic magical number that somebody really needs to put down at a Charles Schwartz or whomever to get started in the financial investment game? Realistically.
I mean, there's no, the way things are set up now, you can go in there with $100 and open an account. It's really not, hey, you have to come with this amount of
Right.
money.
But how far is that $100 going to get you then?
Well, I mean, it all depends upon
What you put
how
in
much
there.
money you're used to making and what your lifestyle looks like. I mean, there's no rule of thumb around
Right.
that. It's like, if you're used to making $100,000 a year,
Right.
then what does it look like in retirement? How much are you expecting to make?
Right.
A good rule of thumb is that you want about 25 times what you need per year
Okay.
in some kind of investment.
Okay.
So let's look at it like this. Say you have Social Security that's going to pay you $30,000 a year,
Right.
and you want to make, you're used to making $100,000 a year. Social Security pays you 30,
Right.
so you need 70,000 to come from somewhere, right? So you take 70,000 times 25. That's how much money you would need built up someplace to.
So
off
then
the top of my
in
head,
people's minds, they're like, that's unobtainable. How am I going to do that?
well then we need to talk about what your lifestyle looks like in retirement. So you can't get blood from a stone,
Sure.
right? So it's like there's a couple levers you can pull. You can work longer,
Right.
right? You can live on less.
Right.
That's really it. Or you can invest more and try to grow.
Right.
I mean, that's really all you can do. So it is what it is. So you're used to making 100. You started late.
Right.
Okay, Social Security is going to pay you 30.
Right.
Okay, so you may have to live on 60 in
Right.
retirement.
Wow.
So that's the reality. What do we need to do?
Right.
Do you need to sell property and
Right.
take some gains in the property
Okay.
and downsize and move to a condominium or relocate?
Yeah.
These are things that
That
conversations
you have
that
to
you
make,
have to, and it's not like you come to an advisor and
Right.
you haven't done what you're supposed to do all this time, and
Right.
now it doesn't
Right.
work
It's a
like that.
magic
It's just,
wand.
this is the reality. It is what it is.
Yeah.
How do we structure something that's acceptable for you given the confines of what we're dealing with?
Right.
With the caveat that you don't just do nothing. You can't
Right.
say, "Oh, I just started late.
So
I'm not going to do anything."
Right. That's
Okay.
not the
It is
answer.
what it
It's
is.
not the answer,
Right. So the
people.
answer is, this is where we are.
Okay.
Where are we going from here? What can I do right now to positively impact what's going to happen tomorrow? Then you
Okay.
start mapping it out, and that's how you go about it.
All right, so I have a wonderful question that everybody wants to know, because everybody wants to be a millionaire. So they say, Antwone, I'm not a millionaire right now, but that is my goal. I'm young. I'm 30 or I'm 40 years old. If I go and start investing today,
Mm-hmm.
what do I need to bring to the table to invest, and how much do I need to put in that investment? Do I need to put in a certain amount every month to get to my million? What do I need to get to that $1 million end game that I want? My goal is to retire and have $1 million in my account, and I want to start with investing. What do I do? How much do I need to get that going to start growing? I'm only 30 or 40, so we have plenty of years now,
Mm-hmm.
and I have money that I'm going to put into this investment account. So what do I need to put in, and what do I need to put in consistently to get to my million?
Well, I think a couple of things to keep in mind. The typical rate of return in the stock market, if you have a broad
Okay.
investment portfolio, is roughly 8%.
Oh.
That's just what it's been over time.
It's going to take forever to get to $1 million.
No, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, if you invest over a normal career, I mean, if you're investing consistently, you should definitely be at $1 million
Right, but
by
I'm
the
telling
end
you,
of it.
from this scenario, this person hasn't started yet investing.
Right.
So they 20, 30, or 40, but they want to get to $1 million before they get to the 70 mark.
Yeah, if you're able to put away, say, $10,000 a year
Okay.
over a 25-year period,
Okay.
you should definitely be
hit
able to
your
get there.
million.
Yeah, and couple of things though.
Okay.
The one thing to keep in mind, a lot of companies offer a matching.
True. 5%.
Component.
3.
Not
5%.
everyone.
Right.
A lot do. Now I've seen people that aren't aware, or they're not taking advantage of it. So I don't care what your financial situation is. I don't care how much debt you have or
Right.
whatever. That's a priority.
Yes.
Because I mean the credit card debt is horrendous, and
Right.
they're charging you 14% or
Right.
whatever it is. But when someone's matching, that's 100% return.
Right.
It's a guaranteed 100%
Yes.
return. And that money is coming, the money you put in your 401k is coming
Yes.
before you pay taxes on
Right.
it. So it's reducing your income, your
Yes.
taxable income.
Your tax bracket.
So
yes, indeed.
yeah, if you're able to do that, you should at least be up to the matching piece of it.
Right.
And then every time you get a pay raise, you need to be increasing what you're contributing. You need to get to the point where you're maxing your 401k.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
So that can help really accelerate this whole
Scenario.
millionaire
Right.
scenario. There's a
Love it.
rule of 72, meaning that whatever rate of return you get, if you divide that into the number 72, that's how long it takes to double your money. So for example, I mentioned 8% is
Right.
the average return over time, roughly,
Right.
for stocks. That means that your stock investment should be doubling every 9 years
Right.
without you adding any more money to
Okay.
it. So if you put $10,000 in, in 9 years, that should double.
Right.
That should double again. That should double again.
Okay.
So if I had my calculator here, I
Right.
could break all this stuff out for everybody. But that's how you need to think in terms
Wow,
of.
okay.
You need to think in terms of if you're starting out. 20, 25 years, you should definitely be able to get yourself to be $1 million.
Wow.
You actually need to be a millionaire.
Absolutely.
Because
to be able to live
right to
here,
be
this
able
is
to live
expensive.
the lifestyle that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that $1 million is not
Right.
what it used to be.
What it used
I mean,
to be.
yeah.
Absolutely.
There's
You need multi-millionaires.
right, exactly.
You
Like
need
living in this
multi-million
area, yeah,
Yes.
you need now again the 25 times thing. So if you need 40,000 from your portfolio, times 25 is $1 million.
Right.
So 40,000 that you're going to draw from every year to supplement the Social Security and pension, whatever.
Right.
You need $1 million to generate that 40,000
Wow.
safely. So
Interesting. Food for thought. So, if you heard correctly, what I heard from this wonderful, scenario that we gave. So, at least there's 12 months in a year. So, if you at least put down $1,000, save $1,000, or let's say $500 a month, invest $500 a month, you can get to close to $1 million in 25 years.
And I think to also keep in mind, especially it depends upon how old people are or when they're starting, but you may not be able to. I wasn't able to put $1,000 a month away when I first started.
Right, it's not really. That's why I said
right.
I broke
So
it down to 5.
I mean, you can start at whatever you can afford to do, right? And then, as I said, as your income increases, you just make sure that you're increasing that contribution, and to the point where you're able to fully max out the contribution, and then that's the best advice I can give.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have anything that you would like to share with our audience as far as any nuggets? Like, give us 2 or 3 nuggets about this whole investing, financial, retirement segment that, somebody that you think people really, really need to know, to hone in into what they need to know.
So what I found in talking with people is that a lot of people are focused, if they actually get to the point where they want to invest, they want to know the hot stock to buy.
Yes.
But most people, if you have not been investing, even if you've been investing for a long time, most people should not own individual stocks.
Okay.
Just because.
So like Google, because Google stock has been, $695 a share now.
It's a great company.
Keep going up and going up.
It's a great company. Yeah.
So you're like,
but I mean, individual stocks can be very volatile.
Right.
So unless you're going to do the due diligence, I only own a few individual stocks, but I know them inside and out.
Right.
So you don't want to own a bunch of individual stocks because you need to track so much information about the stocks that for you to have all the information that you need, unless you really love doing it and it's something that if you're going to just do it kind of on the side or something like that, you can lose a lot of money with individual stocks. So the first thing that I would recommend people do is really start to educate yourself around index funds.
Yes.
There's something called ETFs. They're exchange traded funds, ETFs. And they are index funds, meaning that, again, they track these indices. And there's over 1,000 of these things. They track indices all around the world.
Yes.
So you can buy an index fund for large U.S. companies or small U.S. companies or U.S. bonds or corporate bonds or real estate. You can buy real estate through these index funds. You can buy international investments, emerging markets, all these different things all around the world. You can use index funds to do that. You do not have to be an expert on any individual stock. You simply buy this index fund and let it ride, and it just grows. It goes up and down, but over time it continues to appreciate. You'll be fully diversified. You don't have to be an expert. Mutual funds are a little different than index funds, but typically a mutual fund, you're paying someone higher fees because he or she is supposed to be an expert to be able to pick out the individual stocks that I told you didn't have time to do the research on. They're doing the research. They're picking out the individual stocks. The idea is that they're supposed to be able to do better than the index fund. Oftentimes they do not. They're not able to do better than the index fund, but you're paying additional fees. Now, some mutual funds picking out these stocks. So again, you have the universe of say 500 stocks in the S&P 500. If I am the Harris Mutual Fund, I want to pick out the best of the best stocks that are going to do better than the broad index is going to do. But oftentimes these mutual fund managers are not able to do it. If you are doing it, buying mutual funds, just make sure you're tracking the expenses that you're paying, because you're paying much more than you would with an index fund. Index funds are very inexpensive. It's a really good way to get started. So that would be something. I use index funds a lot for my own clients. I use some mutual funds where appropriate, but I've done a lot of due diligence on the mutual funds, and I kind of know, that they're earning their additional money that they're charging. There's a lot of little niche index funds that you can buy, little niche ETFs that are focused on income, for example. So if I need income for a client, I'll have some of those come into play. That's what I would recommend. And if you're getting to the point where you're beyond the initial phases and you're really starting to build up, you actually really, it would be helpful to sit down with an advisor, because oftentimes the advisor's value is not on picking out the investment piece per se. It's just planning the
Right.
planning piece is so important because there's so many things that happen. There's a lot of mistakes you can make as far as the taxes are concerned, and really understanding how to put everything together and make it all work together. So as those assets are building up, that's very important. There's a website called Investopedia. Investopedia.com. It's like encyclopedia, but it's
Yes.
Investopedia, and it's really good because it just gives definitions for anything that you would ever have a question
love
about.
it.
If you say, what's an ETF or what's
Right.
an index fund, you just type it in there. You'll have a nice
Investopedia.
definition of, yeah, it's really good
Awesome.
resource for people as they're learning.
Okay. So how do people contact you if they want to talk to you personally? You know, they want to come to your company and just really get into their retirement investing. How do they get in contact with you?
Well, a good place again is AntwoneHarris.com. It's ANTWONE Harris HARRIS.com. Also, my company is Platinum Bridge Wealth Strategies, PlatinumBridgeWealth.com,
Okay.
and those are two good ways to contact me. I have some, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn.
He's everywhere, yes.
Right. But any questions that you have, I'll be happy to help you.
Yes.
And good. It's good to be here. It's good to participate, and I
Thank
appreciate
you. I
being
really
able to have a
thank
conversation
you.
with
This
you.
was some great information.
Good.
I learned a lot today. A lot of people have been responding. I'm sorry I didn't get to you. So Vanessa said this is some good stuff. Rick said this is a great show. I mean, we have a lot. Lionel said this is a great information. So I thank you all for tuning in and listening to what he had to share with us, because this is some important information. And again, like I said, we all want to be millionaires. So now we have kind of little path forward to kind of work towards to make that happen. So who don't want to, live wonderfully?
There you go.
And so now we have the information, that some of the tools that we need to get us started, because you got to get started. As he said, you can't just not do anything, because that's not going to help you. So I'm just so happy that you came on to the Impact with Robin Dorsey to share your wonderful information, because we needed to know this. People are retiring soon. You need 5 years. You need to come in 5 years before you make that transition, so you can make sure all of your ducks are in a row, because this is something that is needed. As you know, living in this area alone is very expensive. And it's only getting more expensive as the years progress. So you have to have a plan.
That's right. That's right.
You have to have
Good.
a plan. 2 lessons learned. Can you give us 2 lessons learned?
2 lessons learned.
2 lessons learned.
Let me think. Well, one I mentioned earlier, if you do decide that you want to invest in some individual stocks, you have to be very vigilant about cutting your losses early.
Cut your loss early.
And that's
Number one.
that a lot of people will not, because if something goes against them, they go, I want to hold it until it comes back.
Right.
But you don't do that.
Right.
If you decide on a percentage, if I lose 10% in an investment, I'm out of the investment.
Wow.
Now again, this is when you're trading stocks. When I'm buying stocks for 20 years or buying investment for 20 years, I rarely even look at. I have investments I rarely look at, but they're mainly like index funds, like I mentioned. There's some mutual funds that I have. Like I bought this thing, I don't even look at it. I'm not talking about that. You don't cut those at 10%.
Right.
If I'm trying to hit a home run on some stocks,
Yes, a home run.
then those stocks, if they lose 10%, I'm typically out. Because to kind of cut your losses. And if you continue to do that, if you cut those losses short, but when you're buying stocks, if you let the ones that are doing well, you just add the money that you sold out of the ones that lost, you add to the ones that are doing well.
Okay.
That's the best advice I can give anybody that's
Yes.
buying stocks.
Thank
If you're trying to
you.
make money actually buying stocks. The other thing is you can get caught up a lot with the noise. Don't get too caught up in the news. If you're investing longer term, the news is so emotional. It'll have you all over the
Yes,
place.
it
So
is.
watching the investment channel and trying to read online about what's happening, the market's down, Trump said something crazy this week, can really put you in a bad spot.
Yes,
So
it
you
can.
don't do that.
Don't
Just
do
let
that.
it just let it rock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you again for joining our show. You have been tuning in to the Impact with Robin Dorsey with special guest Antwone Harris. We would like to thank our wonderful sponsors, DChristopherCommunications, who did my wonderful show intro and shows music. We have Resurgence Beauty Lounge, who does my hair and makeup.
There you go.
And we have Crafted Web Designs, who does beautiful web designs and graphic artists. So if you need one of any of these services, just give them a call and they can help you out like they help me out. So again, you have been tuning in to The Impact with Robin Dorsey. I missed you so much. I am back. Not fully, but I am back. I thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to WBGR World Network.